What's up, guys? Welcome to another stunning episode of Off-World Off-Topic.
It will be stunning.
With me, Sam Paler, and Mark Frost-Powell.
Hello.
Off-World Off-Topic is Off-World Empire's weekly show.
Yes.
War again, Mark.
Yeah, more war today.
War again. This time further in the future war.
Yeah. Probably even more speculative than last week.
Yeah.
So last week had lots of, like fact-based content.
Yeah.
Loosely. This week's going to be a bit more speculative. We're going to talk about...
We're kind of following trends that you could potentially trace a few years into the future.
Yeah.
Right? And taking those from some historical context stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be going like really far into the future where the trend lines start to get fuzzy.
Yeah.
When you're starting to extrapolate to a point where it's potentially nonsense. But that's fine.
And bring in things like aliens into the mix and stuff and just see how that goes.
And AI.
AI, of course.
So, and, will war ever end? These types of things.
Yeah.
Was John Lennon's dream, will it ever come true? Who knows?
War is over.
Yes, will that ever happen? Which I think is it's going to be good. I think it's going to be interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But first.
Yes, some few things have been happening.
Yeah, Raptor engines.
Yeah.
SpaceX been shipping them around.
Yeah, they have.
Actually shipping Raptor engines for testing. So the Raptor engine is the methane burning.
Yeah.
That seems to be the case.
Yeah.
Engine that they're going to be using on the speculated about Mars Colonial Transporter.
Yeah.
Well, speculated about by everyone, but
they
have actually said that they are going to have a Mars Colonial Transporter, etc., and that's the whole point of SpaceX.
It's like their next generation of engine, basically.
Yeah. Much heavier lifting. It's going to have
much higher specific impulse.
Yeah.
Because it's methane burning. And it's just basically what they're going to need essentially to start shuttling stuff back and forth to Mars, which is nuts to think about.
Yeah.
Because methane can be basically synthesized relatively straightforwardly on the surface of Mars. That's one of the reasons. One of the bonus reasons for using methane.
How did they synthesize it? Because they have
I'm going to get the name wrong. There's a name of a process.
Okay.
Involving CO2 from the atmosphere, from the Martian atmosphere, and I believe hydrogen that they might have to take with them.
Okay.
It's something like the Savatier process.
Okay,
I can't. It's like a French name.
Sure.
So some process that's relatively cheap and quick to do,
Okay.
and you just do it on the surface of Mars, basically. Synthesize a ton of methane to come back with.
And I suppose also there are maybe methane deposits on Mars anyway. Some sort of clathrate deposit.
Yeah,
maybe. They're probably...
there's definitely methane on Mars.
Yes, there is.
So if there was some way of finding and getting to the source of that, actually, that could be
maybe
sweet.
useful.
You could set up like methane mines.
Maybe.
And mine like
It depends how substantial, because these might be very kind of...
Yeah, they might be.
Small.
Yeah. They could be very
transient type. Oh, yeah, exactly. Could be very... I mean, who knows? We don't really know. But there might be a way of mining that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
What was it? Sorry, it's methane with liquid oxygen. Is that right?
Yes. But
okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to have to get the oxidant from...
Yeah, so that... I should have read up on this process.
Who cares? There's no point being prepared.
Yeah. But you get the oxygen. I think the oxygen comes from the process as well.
Oh, does it? Okay.
CO2.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anyway, basically, I'm probably completely wrong about the process itself, but the concept of in situ synthesizing methane fuel to return to Earth is one of the key reasons for choosing methane, as well as the fact that it delivers like a really high specific impulse compared to
I think that was their main reason, wasn't it? That was their requirement to start with.
Yeah.
The fact that you can produce it on Mars is a bonus.
Yeah, it's a nice little bonus. So anyway, they've shipped this thing. They've shipped what seems to be a scale version of it to their test site at McGregor in Texas.
I seem to have read a few conflicting things.
Yeah.
Some people saying that it is like a full engine.
Yeah.
And some people saying it's a scale model or a scale version. So it's smaller, scaled down version. I don't know what the truth is. I have no idea.
It's significant though. Either way, it's significant because apparently, and again, just as according to
the internet, unsubstantiated internet.
Yeah,
sure.
But this makes like fairly logical sense to me. The part of the R&D phase of designing a new launch vehicle, the rocket engine research development cycles are sort of the most time consuming part of it. because they're the most complex components and the most that go and that have to survive like the most extreme sort of temperatures and stuff like that.
Sure. You would expect that to be the most complex.
Yeah.
part.
So the fact that they're already at a point where they can test even a scale version of it means they're already quite far down that chunk of development for the next rocket families, and the next rocket families are going to be the BFRs.
I mean,
probably.
Going to the point where we're moving. SpaceX sort of not quite, but nearly moved into kind of sci-fi realms. Okay, landing rockets vertically is pretty sci-fi.
It is.
Transporting people back and forward to Mars is totally sci-fi. So we're moving into a kind of just a totally bananas kind of crazy phase of development for them, really.
And you do wonder when is that going to happen? I mean, they have this very ambitious timeline. They want to send a Red Dragon mission to Mars in 2018, and obviously that doesn't require the Raptor engines.
No, that's a Falcon Heavy.
That's a Falcon Heavy, yes.
Which got pushed back
till next year.
Again.
Yeah. Well, maybe you might be able to do it with an expendable Falcon 9. Whether they'd want to do that or not, I'm not sure.
But the Dragon mission, I think it was a Falcon Heavy in the plans, but whatever.
Yeah. An expendable Falcon 9, you can get to higher velocities because you don't need to land it.
Sure.
But yeah, anyway, so that's coming up, and then they want to send humans to Mars in the 2020s, early 2020s, I think. And we'll just have to wait and see, if this timeline. It seems super ambitious at this point.
Yeah. I mean, what was that Falcon Heavy supposed to launch in 2014?
2014. You got to give them credit though. I mean.
Oh, I'm not taking anything away from them. It's just
since is it 8 years since they launched their first launch? It's 8 years ago. I think it is.
Don't know, mate.
I think it's about that.
Anyway, yeah, sure.
So the fact that they've gone from essentially launching a giant glorified firework and watching it blow up 8 years ago to where they are now.
Yeah, I know.
It's pretty astounding.
It is. And I'm not trying to take anything away from them. It's more the fact that they frequently put plans forward for these specific dates.
Yeah.
And although they seem to be meeting the crazy things they're saying they're able to do, but they just tend to happen at a later date.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have no reason to doubt that they'll do all the crazy stuff they're saying. It's just that I doubt it will happen when they say it will now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be surprised if everything gets pushed back, like maybe a Mars-Earth synchronization kind of, one of those cycles. That's a couple of years or whatever.
Yeah. We'll see. But anyway, hopefully we'll get some sweet video of a Raptor engine.
Well, there's the
firing.
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we won't get anything about that and the MCT and all that sort of stuff until the Aeronautical Conference in Mexico, in which Mr. Musk is supposed to be doing his
reveal. Yeah, his basically where they're going to announce the mission architecture for going to Mars. That is going to be amazing.
I know, and we talked about this before actually. Like how much we can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we
I can't fucking wait to see
that.
That is it's like a nerd's dream.
It is.
Having somebody stand up there and seriously tell you that they have a plan to go to Mars, send like hundreds of people at a time to Mars.
We'll have to do something with this.
We will. We definitely will.
But yes,
I want to go to that conference.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
The abstract submission's not finished. Come up with a science project that you are totally not qualified for.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. But I think, maybe we'll get some leaks and stuff. Maybe there'll be some...
Maybe. I mean, all these things are starting to happen. I say all these things. I mean, the Raptor engine tests...
I mean, were they really...
It's a good timing. If they've done some test firings in time to put videos of that in the MCT announcements in September, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
There's also that... I don't know if we have mentioned this before, but there's like a Ron Howard... sort of.
Oh yeah.
What do you call it? Like a mockumentary type thing, like partly
dramatized.
I don't
think it's a mockumentary.
What's a mockumentary?
Isn't that like a comedy kind of like Spinal Tap?
Like mocking something.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. Like
it's like a
fake
comedy
documentary.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not comedy.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it is a fake documentary.
But
anyway,
whatever this thing is, it's like partly dramatized, partly interview sort of documentary style, and that seems to be covering. It's covering like a future mission to Mars.
Yes.
The trailer's out. I think we're gonna dissect this a bit in a future video.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
But there's some interesting tidbits in that, and obviously Elon Musk is in it and stuff. So we're wondering if there's flashes of Mars mission architecture going to be in that documentary. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll do a little.
And it's going to be released after the MCT announcements.
Yes.
So
in November, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess they're hoping to generate a fair amount of buzz around this, so that will obviously help.
Did you know when in November it was? Does it have a specific date?
I can't remember.
Because the aeronautical conference is something like it's late September. It's like the 27th to the 1st or something like that. So maybe, if it comes out in November, it could come off very quickly after that type of announcement, and they all could be tied together.
Yeah,
because there'll be a lot of that Elon Musk stuff in the news, and the documentary will be ready when everyone's hyped. So
it's going to be an interesting last part of the year. Is going to be.
It does line up.
Yeah, it does.
So I think there's going to be some fucking mad stuff talked about.
Yeah.
Like, oh god, yeah.
The internet's going to go fucking insane for a few days over that.
Yeah. Reddit.
yeah, kick off.
It'll be great fun.
Yeah.
Other stories.
There
was a story about Venus.
Yeah.
Being habitable in its early lifetime.
Yeah, interesting.
Now the article was it was reported in loads of different places saying Venus was once habitable, all this sort of stuff, and most of the articles were slightly maybe overselling the paper,
the actual contents of the paper.
So we read some of the paper, a lot of the paper, and that is what their conclusion is.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
but it's a modelling paper, so they sort of take various assumptions about Venus's physical characteristics over geological time and make some. Obviously, they have to do some big assumptions in order to generate this kind of habitable Venus, which is not uncommon for modelling papers. They sort of have to do these types
especially
of things.
These types when you're looking at kind of early planetary evolution,
in which you've got very
little constraints on it, especially with Venus, where the whole surface of Venus essentially resurfaced probably in its entirety within the last few 100 million years. So that's like on the Earth, even on the Earth, we have a fairly patchy geologic record going back, more than like 1 billion years or so. It gets pretty sparse, and that's because we've got active plate tectonics.
Yes.
But imagine what learning about like the ancient history of the Earth would be like if the entire surface had just been like completely erased.
It's just like a Hawaiian basalt.
It's just totally refreshed. Yeah. Like someone had clicked refresh about like 200 million years or 500 million years ago.
Well, it's resurfaced. That doesn't mean there's not old bits of it that are buried.
That's true.
I don't know if you core down into the Vesuvius. Well, no one knows because no one's actually done this.
Yes,
but you core down into Venus's like upper mantle or just the crust, or I don't know how Venus is structured. Anyway, I imagine if there's a resurfacing event, that just means that there's lots of volcanic activity and overlain.
Yeah.
You might still be able to get some geological history out of burying down, unless the entire thing turned
overturned,
literally overturned. Yeah. Instead of being like global volcanism for a few million years, or longer than that, or whatever it was. So maybe it's still there. Maybe we'll be able to find if we land and drill. But yeah, that'd be kind of sweet. It would be kind of sweet.
But this paper, so
the paper's weird. The paper was titled "Was Venus the first habitable world in our solar system?" Right, and they don't answer that question. At all in the paper.
That's a cool question.
It is,
but they don't even address it. They don't even say like at the end we think it was, or that question is never referred to in the paper.
Yeah, no, specifically the bit about the first habitable world, because they weren't seemingly trying to constrain anything in the extreme early history. So something, when we think Earth started to develop like sort of 4.1 billion years ago, maybe, then they're not really talking about any of those ages. They start talking about it's like 2.9 or something.
Yeah, I think they pick 2.9 just because they've got a fairly good idea of what like the solar irradiation would have been like at the time.
Exactly.
And they could plug that into their models. But 2.9 billion years ago, the Earth was clearly habitable 2.9 billion years ago.
Yes.
There was life here. We know that.
Yes.
That's not disputed.
No.
So in that sense, we can't say Venus was the first or wasn't the first or whatever. We don't know like chronologically how it fits in.
Yeah, it's an odd title.
It's a bit of a weird title, but
however, it's still kind of interesting in the sense that it wouldn't be surprising necessarily that Venus was habitable in its early history. Really, there's no reason to suspect it wouldn't have gone through some stages of planetary evolution that are somewhat analogous to those that happen on Mars and Earth. It's a kind of similar planet.
Similar planet forming in a similar part of the solar system, so it would have had fairly similar materials.
Yeah, similar part of the protoplanetary disk, really.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So,
Mars, Venus, and the Earth is actually really useful having those 3 planets in the solar system.
Yeah, because they
are do like comparative stuff with.
Yeah, but it shows you. I mean, they think how different those 3 are now.
Yeah,
I mean, they're almost the extreme. Mars is cold in most of it. It's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Earth is kind of what we call moderate.
Yeah,
and then
Venus is
you've got
mega
Venus
hot.
is just crazy greenhouse atmospheres, like 400 degrees or something on the surface.
Hottest planet in the solar system.
So. But despite the fact that they're from this very similar part of the protoplanetary, and yes, Venus is closer to the sun, but that's not the reason why it's so hot. It's because of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. It makes a great. It shows you how much diversity in planetary evolution you get in such a small part of the protoplanetary disk, potentially from lots of other different changes in terms of the different sizes of the planets, maybe the moon forming impact, all these different things that contributed to Earth being the way it is, and Venus being the way it is, and Mars being the way it is. So it's a very kind of weird relationship between those 3. But not if they're right, because they don't really talk about early Venus that much. Early Venus anyway. They talk about 3 billion years ago.
Yeah.
But potentially
if it was
you could
more
have had
Earth-like then, even then, that's still
Mars was starting to get a bit ropey.
Mars was starting to sort of fall apart a little bit.
It might have been,
but it still would have probably implied. Yeah, that's true. Mars was a lot more active than it is now.
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
It wasn't at its premium.
2.9. No, it wasn't at its peak. No.
No. Probably.
But it still shows that there was probably, if you take what they're saying here as at face value,
and you assume that the habitability of Venus was extended further back into its history possibly as well,
then you possibly had 3 planets that looked very similar at that time, and that all were capable of supporting life,
which is crazy.
Which is nuts.
And then you get to back to that panspermia thing again, as where did life originate? Where did it transfer to?
And given that there would have been material transferred probably between all 3 planets, do we have any chunks of Venus on Earth? I have no idea, actually. I've never heard of a Venusian meteorite. I feel like I would have heard of that, but maybe
that's
there's no reason.
That's a good point. I'm gonna have a look.
Yeah, go for it.
Venus.
There's
there's loads of Mars ones, right?
Yeah, there's tons of Mars ones. I wonder if it's for some orbital mechanics reason less likely for inner planets to chuck stuff towards outer planets.
I think there's some suggestions that some of them might be from Venus.
I guess part of the problem. One of the main reasons we know Martian meteorites are Martian are from gas vesicles in the rock, and they basically sample the Martian atmosphere as they're ejected.
Yes.
And so we know we can compare that to orbital data from the Martian atmosphere and it's probably Martian. That's one of the main reasons.
Not yet. So do we have, this is on meteorites.asu, which is the Arizona State University, so it'd be a good website. They say, do we have any confirmed meteorites from Venus or Mercury? And they say not yet.
Right.
There could be some pieces of both planets in existence in meteorite collections, but they haven't been identified as such.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem probably a bit crazy to suggest
you would expect
that there was nothing ever transferred.
Certainly expect there to be transfer of material between them. There's no reason, unless there is some orbital mechanics reason why you would expect them to.
I was thinking, but I don't
only
know
move
if there
inwards
is.
in the solar system instead of outwards, or I don't know why, but whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, but so anyway, so there probably was a time where you had 3 planets. Well, it seems like there may have been a time.
It's not ridiculous. I think it's not a ridiculous suggestion.
I mean, Venus likely had a shitload more water. It's quite dry now in terms of. When I say dry, I don't mean just liquid water. I mean just water generally. It actually has a pretty shitty level of amount of water in its
got a lot of
atmosphere,
nitrogen, hasn't it?
Tons of nitrogen, tons of carbon dioxide. I think the idea is that most of the water has been lost to space.
Yeah.
And if you backtrack, because it's got some ridiculous D2 deuterium hydrogen ratio, which basically is like a signature for water loss to space.
The heavy stuff gets left behind.
Yeah, the heavy stuff gets left behind. Yeah, exactly. It's got some ridiculously high DH ratio, which basically, if you backtrack that, it used to have a shitload of water.
Sure.
So if the temperatures were low enough, then that water would have been liquid.
Sure. So who knows? But the potential for 3 habitable planets in the early solar system is very interesting.
It is
very intriguing.
One of the main things that came out of their model was this concept of rotation speed as well, so that slow rotation for something like Venus actually makes seemingly kind of weirdly makes it a lower temperature. I don't quite understand exactly how that works, but I think one of the implications they're saying is that if you find a Venus-like exoplanet, instead of assuming that it's just horrendously hot, you should look at the rotational speed, because that's going to be quite important for surface temperature, which is another cool thing that's come out of this.
All right, main topic then.
Yep. Let's talk about war.
Let's talk about war again.
Yeah.
Right. So we finished the last chat about war by kind of concluding that technology would push a distance between those involved in the conflict.
Yeah.
And the actual fighting itself.
Yeah.
And that we're kind of moving. We're still in a way in the era of regional wars, smaller regional wars and proxy wars.
Yeah.
And there's seems to be every reason to suggest that will continue for a while.
Sure.
Because there's lots of different old kind of tribal conflicts that have existed forever almost, or for very long periods of time between large parts of the populations of different countries,
different regions.
Literally based on tribal stuff or tribal-like kind of allegiances to different
just in-group, out-group ideologies.
Sure. I don't see any of those dying off in any particular time, really. I don't see, but I see them just a lot of them just lessening in terms of the larger, more developed countries, the extremes just slightly sort of being smoothed out.
Yeah.
And so once you give, let's say, the different kind of what are they the different sort of like Arabic tribes around the Middle Eastern area where they have lots of conflicts now.
Yeah.
As they get more and more advanced weapons, I see them. They're having proxy wars already.
Yeah.
Places like Saudi Arabia and Iran are already having proxy wars. So I see as they get more capable, I doubt they're going to risk open conflict with each other.
Yeah, because it's just more and more risky. There's just more and more damage.
So presumably those even though they've got those old kind of in-group, out-group feelings about each other and dislikes, I see the open wars between them not
probably
continuing.
Declining. Yeah.
In the same way.
Yeah.
Really. And places like North Korea, South Korea, I mean, could they have an open war now? I don't know. That's a pretty sketchy one.
Yeah, that really is. It's a weird place.
They've got nuclear weapons now in North Korea, so if South
Korea, they could nuke Seoul.
Yeah, but so South Korea is not going to risk open war with them.
No, that is a really sketchy area, and that's a bit of a special case actually, because they're so
close to each other.
So tense. Like they literally have 24 hours a day. They have, and this is obviously just symbolic, but they have like guards staring at each other over like 10 meters distance over the border. It's just, and the whole like demilitarized zone, so heavily fortified on both sides, just ready to go. It's just like poised for war all the time.
Yeah.
It's a really mad situation.
Yeah, but anyway, I see these things tending to not result in open conflict so much between the direct competitors.
Yeah.
And that becoming more and more common, even for, say, African countries that fight over things now. If they become more technologically developed, then you end up having a similar situation where risking open conflict is just too much.
Yeah, I mean this is why proxy wars exist at all, is exactly for that reason.
Yeah.
Because it's too much of a risk to get an open conflict. So does that mean that these divisive ideologies remain and just fester, or do you reckon that it's actually going to lead to them kind of being smoothed over, as you said?
I think they smooth over.
Yeah.
I think they smooth over because everyone just becomes too interdependent.
Yeah.
And yes, they may exist as kind of rivalries, but they may, in the same way that kind of England's a bit of a rival with Germany. I mean, we kind of, we like each other. We get on well, but we did fight a massive war not that long ago.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe that type of situation. You would hope that's kind of where it leads to.
Yeah.
So I think you get this lifting of certain countries out of these smaller ideological engagements because they become too worried about destroying each other and to have too much at risk.
Sure. And
so they fight smaller and smaller, ever decreasing proxy wars.
Yeah.
And the cyber warfare still be a big thing. So.
Oh yeah.
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 So I see the makeup of everyone involved not changing hugely, but just some of them being lifted out and some of them coming in. Some of the middle tier ones take over.
Yeah. That's. I think that's probably a fair extrapolation.
And then we'll talk about whether war dies off totally.
Yes. Well, there could be some big spanners in the works with that scenario.
Yes.
With technological reasons for that not to ever come about.
Yes.
Things that make us take a big left turn.
So do you think corporations would ever get involved in wars? So you already get mercenaries involved in certain conflicts, right?
Yeah, sure.
I'm pretty sure. Was it Gaddafi hired a bunch of?
He did.
Serbian mercenaries.
Yeah.
I think that's a common. That Serbian mercenaries is like a thing that people hire.
Export mercenaries.
Yeah. Those types of. No, I'm not really thinking of those types of conflicts, to be honest, where a larger government hires some mercenaries. I mean, that's and companies do hire mercenaries to protect assets they have in unstable regions. So mining companies that go out to dodgy parts of Africa hire mercenaries to protect, mining machinery, etc., and personnel. So do ships that go through the Gulf of Aden from Somalian pirates. They hire mercenaries on the boats. To again ward off pirates. So those types of things already happen.
Yeah.
But do you think you could ever get a kind of open conflict, actual conflict between two companies? So you have two private armies fighting.
Yeah. So armies owned by a company.
Yes.
So they take their orders from like the board of directors of the company or something.
Yeah.
Can I see that happening? I mean,
is it possible?
I mean, I guess it's possible. Yeah. Whether it's likely is a different question.
So you've got to. So if you think about the situations in which could that ever arise, what sort of situation would it take for such a thing to arise?
It would have to be a resource that's worth.
Sure, to start with,
investing in an army for, and then obviously risking
getting into a point where there is some sort of conflict in which it's not legally clear which one's which, or it is legally clear, but the government involved has no or very little power to become involved in making a decision or being an arbiter in that decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, so like a company's got so powerful that at least in its local area, it's more powerful than the government. The government has no power to stop the companies basically fighting.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, that's the only situation where I could see it ever arising. It needs to be somewhere like the Wild West type situation, where you don't have a strong government with an army that can stop this thing happening, but also probably somewhere where the powers that be, the UN and the Western world, can't come in and stop such a thing happening, because they would try and if an American company and a Chinese company started going at it in some African country, those two governments would stop it pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, they get shut down. In the world that we live in right now, that just wouldn't happen.
No. But I can imagine. Can you imagine a place in the future, a kind of
like a colony, like a colony on Mars, for example, or
that's
something like that.
Yeah,
where the terrestrial governments
SpaceX
are so far
away. Blue Origin, massive war.
Yeah, the Bezos versus Musk conflict.
Yeah, they just have a. They do it as like a trial. Instead of doing that, just have a one-on-one.
out on the plains of Mars.
Yeah.
Like souped up spacesuits with loads of weapons.
Oh man, that'd be so. Anyway, I could. Yeah, sure. That's that sort of situation where the resources that everyone requires to literally survive, oxygen, water, etc., are potentially going to be controlled by private companies.
Yeah.
Those are things you fight wars over.
Yeah.
That's when if a company is doing something that is treading on the feet of another company or is endangering the prospects of another company or its people or whatever, and there is no government to stop something happening, you could end up with a flash situation where you have some sort of, it doesn't have to be a full-scale war, but it certainly could be small skirmishes, conflicts, or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And the only other type of situation you could get that on Earth in the future would be, some godforsaken part of wherever where there is almost no government.
Well,
it's had years of
Antarctica war. Or something, maybe.
Well, yeah.
Well, Antarctica is heavily, there's like a lot of legislation. You're not allowed to do.
I don't think Antarctica. I was thinking of some I don't know, it's like a part of the African continent in the desert or somewhere. There's some oil resources somewhere. There's very little population anyway. There's a small government that has very little interest in stopping a conflict between two companies. Really, it just kind of lets them fight it out. I wonder if that's the only type of situation where you could have open conflict between
two
private companies.
Yeah. I still think it would get stopped. I think even if a regional government wasn't on it, like a higher level, like the UN or something, would be like, you can't. We don't live in a world where you can do this.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're probably right.
But what about just some kind of mental sci-fi dystopian future where you have companies that have gained so much power that they are essentially global superpowers themselves, and that even the UN don't have enough power to stop them.
Okay. So like Apple, okay.
Yeah.
They get so. How could a company get much bigger?
How would it would have to be? Is it purely money? Yeah, basically. If Apple somehow managed to get the same amount of money as like the entire US.
Well, they had more free cash at one point, I think, than the US government, didn't they? Yeah. Something like that. I mean, they had nowhere near the kind of assets and whatever, but.
I mean, the US is just so massive anyway.
Yes,
it's kind of hard to. But say like a smaller country, just kind of the level of like a country that would be taken seriously as a global power.
Well, I think Apple's got enough. The value of Apple is more than a lot of smaller countries.
Yeah, so it's obviously not just about money. They don't have like land in the way that a country does. You know, they're not protecting like resources in the way that a country is.
No.
So yeah,
I'm not saying that. I'm only saying Apple because that's the
Apple's
biggest
company. It's the biggest company, and it's just a plucked out of the earth, and it's just an example. But yeah, there's like some kind of situation. I guess it's been used in sort of a plot device in sci-fi and stuff, like the evil like controlling corporation,
the Umbrella Corp,
or
something.
Whatever. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like, I mean, what kind of scenario would have to? Well, how would that come to be? It's like some kind
of like, in a global.
Yeah, some kind of like runaway capitalism where
someone just monopolizes everything.
Yeah, and just grab all the money and there's no rules basically. But we don't live in that world. It just wouldn't happen. I just don't see it.
There are a lot. Well, I think that there are laws in place to stop monopolies happening and to stop these types of things spreading, to stop. I don't think it can happen in Western civilization. I don't think.
Yeah, because you're basically talking about sort of ends up being like a dictator, like a warlord almost. Like the CEO of the company have their own private army, can make demands on the world stage.
Is what you're imagining.
Is the kind of scenario that I'm pitching.
Yes.
But I'm also saying at the same time that I don't think it's a likely scenario.
I just don't see any of the. I see it being stopped before it gets to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just wouldn't be able to get anywhere near that.
I mean, the government has total control over private companies. Obviously, they do their own thing and whatever. But if the government decides that they're doing something that's breaking a law that the government has set, and you can close loopholes if you need to close loopholes to stop them growing in a certain way. They can't do anything if the government just says we are taking this and this and this from you. I mean, they can go through court systems and whatnot, but ultimately, if they're doing something that is against the law, which is set by the government, then maybe you can get collusion between a government and a company to like grow it to some super size or something.
Yeah. Unless the company's been...
Trump Corp gets massive if he becomes president.
Yeah. And he starts building his own private army in secret.
Yeah.
Like Trump tanks and Trump jets.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to take some really bizarre scenario
to
the point where the government, I would say you're getting to a point where the government itself has to be corrupted in a way.
The government has to be part of it. Has to be like in on it.
And then is it really the company that's doing it or the corporation? It sounds like it's more a problem with the government. And not being able to control.
Yeah, actually, I mean, thinking through it, we live in a world where things like that aren't allowed to happen for good reason. Like a group of people just suddenly deciding to build their own army and take over some shit.
Yeah.
Like, our institutions are set up to stop that happening.
Yeah, that could, if you left it, okay, say there was no hands-on, and you said any company can go out and have their own army.
Yeah.
And you could have aggressive land grabs and whatnot by companies, and it wasn't there wasn't a government that had ownership of everything and allowed these things to exist within it.
Yeah.
So you could have, you could plausibly have that. You would already have that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And that is sort of what that's essentially just setting up a new type of load of countries.
It is, yeah. But the reason we have the systems we have now, partly, is to stop like runaway craziness like this happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't see a big. I do think space is a different thing.
Yeah. So I think the small scale stuff far away from the influences of established governments is actually a potential.
Let's say. Okay, let's go really far future.
Okay.
Like asteroid mining in a different solar system.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
So you would have some sort of presumably like a UN type thing that tries to govern human
activity in our solar system.
Yes, within our solar system or just within space, just humans in space, and it represents that it's the face of humanity in space, whatever it ends up being. And they set laws and whatnot for kind of keeping some order in the way interactions happen in space. But when you're in a different solar system and there's not,
you're light years away from
any kind of influence,
like discipline.
Really. Although having said that, if you can get to another solar system and you are traveling, to another solar system to do asteroid mining.
Yeah, but maybe
you're sort of talking about a situation where you can police those things.
Sure.
Basically, I'm saying, is there ever a point where it gets beyond government reach to make any interventions in these types of situations, and you can get skirmishes and things, battling out for resources by companies going into a new part of whatever, a new part of Mars, a new part of the asteroid belt, a new solar system, whatever.
Yeah, like say there's like a solar system discovered that's really rich in some quite rare
unobtainium.
Element. Yeah,
and they want it, so they battle it out.
And some two companies sort of race there in their like almost light speed vessels. Sure. And then when they arrive, they have a giant fight, giant space battle. That would be fucking cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know,
but I don't see. I can't. I can see small mercenary battles at the most, kind of thing. I don't see big open conflicts between companies.
Yeah, and even that you have to project fairly far into the future to a situation that's very different to what we have now. Because you can't imagine two companies now having a fight. It's a crazy idea, isn't it?
Yes. A proper. I mean, they do sort of industrial espionage and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the behaviour of big companies does have analogies to sort of warfare, I guess.
Sure.
But actual like pitch battles.
Yes.
Like armed troops and like aircraft and rockets going out. And, I don't know, just warfare. Yeah, I can't imagine it.
No, I can't imagine it either.
But yeah, maybe on a colony on Mars or something.
Possibly. I just even on a colony on Mars, I still see there being some kind of
police force.
Yeah, just a government to run it. Something there to run it. Some sort of overarching power of the people that arbitrates things like we do in countries now, that makes decisions and upholds the rule of law and stuff.
Yeah, in the early days it'll be so dependent on the Earth anyway. It'll be like an Antarctic research base or something in the early days.
Oh, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, sure, but when it gets self-sustaining and stuff,
you imagine it's just going to be run like any other country.
It's going to have a government. Yeah, it's going to have a government for sure, and they'll start from the ground up with that government as well. So they'll probably try and make it without all the historical baggage of governments on Earth. It'll probably be like a pretty...
As well as like the aim would be to distill all the best parts of governments from around the world.
Exactly.
To try and make something that has a very strong constitution, basically.
Very strong constitution, very equal, very, forward thinking.
Yeah.
Probably not the kind of place where you could get rogue companies fighting it for resources.
Yes.
Yeah. So all the stuff we've been talking about so far has been just like, we said it earlier actually, just assuming just a kind of increase in the technology we have now, but a world that's still pretty recognisable to us. So everything's going to get more advanced, but but that we will recognize, this version of the future is something that we recognize from our world now.
Sure.
But what if there is a fundamental shift in technology?
Yeah, because we've been saying forget the singularity.
So now let's think about the singularity, the technological singularity, something like the advent of artificial superintelligence. The whole point of the singularity is it's something that you can't really predict beyond.
Yes.
But let's fucking try anyway.
Particularly in relation to war. So if you think about, I guess, the build up to the singularity, there will be changes in how those in potentially warfare or the reasons for conflict to happen in the years leading up to the development of the singularity, which may not be as, I mean, the idea is that it comes out of nowhere almost because it's happened so quickly, and then suddenly it's here.
Yeah. But there might be hints that it's closer.
Yes.
Some very, very clever systems being implemented that just seem a bit like, whoa, how the hell are you doing that kind of thing? I don't necessarily mean in just conflict, in war, but in the financial spheres, whatever. That might kind of hint at the close development of it. But I think the thought is that it's not going to be, it won't necessarily come from like a government or something like that. It might just be some people in a research lab that develop it, or a company that are developing a product, or
just one guy in his bedroom.
One guy in his basement just coding.
Yeah,
that's probably unlikely.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
Probably not. But
the whole point of the singularity, at least, is comes back to this idea of recursive self-improvement. Mm-hmm. So if some guy in his bedroom just manages to
crack the code, writes the correct algorithm that generates that,
take some deep learning like neural network thing, and then like writes some stuff into it that allows it to learn how to get better at learning and iterate on that.
And then
that's it.
Sure. So I guess as we're thinking the leading up to AI, I guess would the development of an artificial superintelligence, or the threat of the development of an artificial superintelligence, force some groups of countries into conflict in order to prevent the development of that artificial superintelligence before they develop it, or to steal the plans to develop it, or something like this, stealing the plans for the Death Star?
I mean, I mean, so it's probably quite unlikely that there will be clear signs that it's about to happen.
Yeah.
But let's say that there are, and say that there's a country that, it's quite clear that there's a certain country that have just on the cusp of developing artificial superintelligence, and again, it's not clear that a superintelligence would be aligned with our goals in any way at all. But let's just say that this thing that they're about to develop is going to basically make them win the world.
A genie type AI.
Yeah, like so first of all, what would be the benefits of having one of those things? Well, I mean, fucking everything, right? Like, you just be able to say, like, just give me all of the resources in the world. All right, done. Like, stop all of my enemies from having armies. All right, take their armies away. Done. Like, whatever you want.
Sure.
You just give
as
me
long
all
as
the
it's
money.
we're talking about even if it is an AI that is not aligned with our goals, or it's a sovereign AI, so an AI that goes out and does its own thing essentially, and we're just along for the ride. There's arguments that you could kick off a war to stop them developing that on the basis that it's going to potentially wipe out the whole of humanity.
Yeah.
Or the other version is that you don't want them to have some intelligence that gives them access to technology that's way more advanced than yours.
Yeah.
So there are two potential reasons to go into a conflict there.
And in fact, there aren't really any reasons to not go into the conflict. I mean, you've got to assume the worst, haven't you?
Well, but that's the thing.
Maybe not. I don't know.
So the assumption is, so if it's being developed in a country that has opposing views to another superpower, okay?
Yeah, and
let's just say China and the US, because it's the easiest to.
And it's being done behind closed doors in the sense that they're not being open. They're saying they're not saying like guys, come and help us with this. Like, we're developing this crazy thing. We need help, and let's talk about it.
It's not a global project.
Not like that. No. It's
espionage that has found out that they're doing this and how far along it is.
Yeah, I mean, Doesn't it make sense to stop it at all costs?
To try and stop it. Because I feel like it wouldn't though. Intuitively, I feel like it would end up being, there would not be a clear reason to it kind of. I mean, maybe what I think might happen would be things would try and be done in sort of a clandestine way, in which you would try and disrupt the program. You would try and, I don't know, it would be cyber type things. Try and hack into it, try and change parts of it, try and ruin it that way. I don't think it would be an open conflict type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, people could come up with rational arguments, or certainly arguments that have some merit, that a preemptive strike, even a nuclear strike, is the thing you have to do there. The thing is, though, you'll never, with the AI, artificial superintelligence thing, it feels like a totally nebulous idea. You're never going to be able to convince
your population
that's a good idea, and there's no way a government would.
And you're never going to be able to be sure that it's that if you don't do that, it's going to be the end of the world or the end of you.
It seems like a totally mad thing to do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a leap in the dark, and that's a crazy thing to leap in the dark about.
Yeah,
firing a nuclear weapon.
I mean, just no.
It's not going to happen.
Unless it was a crazy person, no.
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that...
But...
I think that the way it would go down would be they would try everything to stop it with clandestine type things.
Yeah, but what if they fail?
Then you
just got to let it happen.
Well, there's nothing else you can do then, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but maybe that then becomes the next level deterrent after nukes. Something that's more threatening than a nuclear arsenal is.
But you can't threaten to develop an artificial superintelligence.
Well, I was going to say either you have developed one and say it's like if we're using these distinctions, like a genie or something like that, which you keep in a box and it does what you say. So you don't necessarily need to use it.
But the deterrent only works if the other side has the same thing. Otherwise, you've just got total military power and you've got nothing.
Yeah.
You've got, as long as...
Yeah, sure. That's kind of what I mean.
It's a deterrent to anyone else attacking you. But if you've got any ambitions to go and take over places, there's nothing anyone can do. It's like only one country, say, had a nuclear arsenal.
Exactly. Well, so the next level, like massive, mutually destroyed destruction again implies that both countries have it. But there's the next level sort of super weapon.
Sure.
Above nukes.
Yeah, because it can presumably come up with anything to
suddenly
cause massive harm.
Yeah, and if you have one of these things, then nukes aren't a threat to you anymore.
No,
presumably, because you'll be able to, your super intelligent AI will just sort it out. Just disarm them in the air or disarm them on the ground or whatever. Just like completely disarm all your enemies. So basically, whoever has one of these things wins the world.
Yes.
They own the world.
The point, and unless you develop them at identical times. Potentially,
that's it. No one else will ever develop
someone
one.
First develops it, then that's the end of it.
Yeah. So we live in their world for the rest of time.
I just don't, unless there is a way that people use other systems, not an artificial superintelligence system, but some other system to either to prevent the development of it, not say a nuclear strike or something crazy like that, but there are ways in which they can send in say the whole of the government's military budget is spent on trying to develop viruses to like destroy all the work they're doing there on this thing. I mean, you can just de-wire everything though, can't you? You just don't have anything linked up to anything. You just kind of create like basically an air gap between the internet and this thing that's being developed.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah.
So you'd have to do kind of like an electronic bomb or something.
Yeah.
One of those, what do you call them?
EMP.
Yeah, that's that sort of thing.
Yeah, whatever it is. I think there would be some serious arguments coming from people to say that they should go in, given the implications of,
But I just don't think it's ever going to be clear that bigger change is about to happen until it's happened.
Yeah. At which point it's too late. This is a fucking scary concept. The thought of, being in a situation where a country might be on the brink of developing something like this, but the rest of the world can't really do anything about it because it can't be sure that what's happening. I mean, it's trying to do things about it, as you've been saying. It's trying to like hack or like do various clandestine approaches to try and get rid of it or slow it down or stop it or like copy the technology and do it themselves. But we can't justify to ourselves like a total, like a nuke or something like that, just because it's such a huge leap.
And it's a global, and then you've nuked, you're probably,
and what the country would do is just
countries.
Just nuke you back.
And the risk of open nuclear warfare is higher.
Yeah, so actually you're choosing between a probable either world destruction or world domination by one superpower, which is the AI route, or a definite world destruction, which is the nuke them route. So it's like, okay, well, out of those two options, obviously you're going to have to go for the probable one rather than the definite one. And just cross your fingers and hope that it's all going to be okay. How likely is this scenario?
Well, I don't know how likely the whole ASI thing is anyway. I mean, it makes... I can't... we don't know how... We've
talked about ASI a lot.
Episodes on it, and so I'm not going to go into that.
But assuming that ASI is of something that is artificial superintelligence to the point where that we've been sort of talking about here is possible...
I still don't really see why it can't be possible.
Exactly. I think as long as you agree that there's technological advancement and that there's nothing special about intelligence, that the human brain, biological matter is limited to that.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
Which makes no sense whatsoever.
Sure.
So as long as you assume those two things, then surely it's going to happen at some point, unless we get set back through some other means in our development. So basically, I can't think of a good reason why it's not going to happen. So is this a situation that we're likely to be facing at some point?
I guess so.
I don't know. I mean, I think.
Well, the other option is that it's not a secret type development thing. It's not. It's some sort of like the Large Hadron Collider thing, where a huge number of countries get together to try and build an artificial superintelligence in the correct way, in the way that's not going to end up with some rampant sovereign AI that just goes mental and turns everyone into carrots or something,
or some rogue government or despot owning it and going nuts,
getting there before. A less desirable party with less of the world's interests at heart gets there.
Yeah.
Sure. So
it's either that, which is a very consciously decided, let's do this properly kind of approach.
Yes.
Which would be very comforting.
Yes.
Given how high stakes this is.
Yes.
Or it will be a group of people / a company not working in national interests, just working off their own research, their own...
It's like DeepMind.
Like something like DeepMind. Doing it almost accidentally. I mean, obviously DeepMind are trying to build deep learning, machine learning stuff, but they might be testing something. They're developing things all the time, aren't they? Okay, this is slightly better at doing this. It's slightly, we're trying to push the envelope a bit. At what point do you say, okay, it's getting scary, let's stop? Maybe it's really hard to know when it's getting scary and when to stop. You just keep, and you sort of by accident end up building something that's recursively self-improving. So I think one of those two scenarios, either the big multinational, let's do it properly approach, or the small company / research group, doing it on their own approach, is potentially more likely than just like a rogue government
Manhattan
or like
project.
Exactly, like secret like military operation type thing.
Yes, I think
it doesn't rule it out though.
No, it doesn't rule it out, but I think it's more likely that. It's probably very hard to do this, whatever it ends up being. We have to do to develop something to develop an ASI.
Yeah.
I would imagine that it might be a company gets there before some sort of secret military installation does. Maybe a company or some sort of collaboration in multinational collaboration and so I think maybe we don't have to worry about that scenario perhaps.
Sure, unless
I think it's still worth thinking about what you might do in that situation in case it arises, because it's fun, and two because it's fun.
Those are the two best reasons.
And it might I don't know, maybe in the far future be something that someone has to think about.
Or the not so far future maybe.
Well
could be happening in our lifetimes.
Well, yeah.
And what happens if this company that develops it the country that company's based in decides to sort of lay down the law and I don't know, basically acquire the technology from the company.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what the government, I don't know, there'll probably be lots of legal frameworks and international legal frameworks into how to manage the development of a really important technology.
Yeah.
I don't really know how that sort of thing goes down. It's a bit like the Lockheed fusion reactor thing. If some company developed some fundamentally important technology that was, vital that the world is able to build it and use it, and it's not monopolized by one company, you'd end up with somewhat of a similar situation. I don't imagine a private company being, I don't know, but I mean, a private company, unless it's had like kind of expressly evil goals to do something, if it develops an ASI.
Yeah, you can't imagine DeepMind being like, right, now we're going to take over the world.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. I think it would be, I mean, in that situation, I would not be surprised. Shit, actually. I mean, this is kind of getting off the topic of war.
It's all right.
I mean, if they did develop an ASI, okay, and they published how to do it in something like a Nature journal,
yeah,
is that a really fucking bad idea?
Because suddenly it's out there, and anyone who wants to do it can do it.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the nature of the ASI. It depends on
it's
so
a
many
Genie
things.
type ASI, so it's not. If it's a sovereign AI, we forget about it, because then we have no control over it.
Yeah, and it's very likely that once you built one of them, there won't be any others.
Yeah, so we're the only way this scenario could come about is that if it's a Genie or a, what's the other one?
Out of those categories, Oracle. So one of those, they're basically, so those categories are like the Genie and the Oracle are both sort of isolated in a box, and you can kind of, get information from them or get them to do things for you, but they're completely under your control. Whereas the sovereign, I think usually in these scenarios, is connected to the internet and can just do anything it wants to do.
The sovereign AI has its own volition, essentially, and it just
gets
you
on
are
with
just
it.
along with you've developed it, and it's far more intelligent than you are, as are the other AIs, except for it just goes off and does whatever it wants and does whatever with humanity as it sees fit.
Yeah. And there's probably, well, again, we've talked about this at length in other episodes, but I feel there's good reason to think that the Genie and the Oracle are more difficult to develop.
Yes, probably.
Than the sovereign. Yeah. But anyway.
I mean, you could fight a future war with a sovereign AI, but you just lose it straight away. So anyway.
Like Terminator style.
Yes.
But probably not anything like that.
No, nothing like that. Go back and watch our previous episodes on AI if you want to hear more about that nonsense.
Yeah. Get right into that. So assuming that it's something in a box, that anyone can then build and have that power.
Yes.
Then that is a bad idea.
Is it? Everyone has it then.
Hang on, maybe that's a great idea. Maybe that's like the answer to everything in the world.
but everyone has that power then. So any so let's just give an example. You can build, let's say what it is some sort of algorithm, okay, that uses a computer to become to a point where it's super intelligent and learns whatever about the world. And you have to have these types of hardware to do it. And let's say those types of hardware are kind of off the shelf stuff.
Sure.
So you can get a powerful computer cluster and a bunch of different camera sensor and a link to the internet, and that's it, or whatever it ends up being. That means that developing any technology, solving basically any problem, if you run
at almost everybody's fingertips in the entire world.
Yes. So think who that includes. That includes North Korea. That includes ISIS. That includes everyone.
Yeah, like the most insane psychopath that you can possibly conceive of
would have the power potentially to develop
and just follow all of their life's ambitions to the end.
Yes,
but then everyone else would have the power to stop them doing that.
Inevitably, it comes into conflict because let's take ISIS for example.
Yeah.
The overall goal of ISIS is not to just sit there and do nothing. It's to essentially turn the entire world into sort of
into
like
an Islamic state.
Yes, and so that comes into conflict with other countries who don't want that.
Yeah.
with everyone who has a genie ASI or an Oracle ASI, are they equally matched then? They don't have that because
maybe
they're not really, are they? They have the same intellectual knowledge, but do they have the same
ability to do things?
They have less manpower and whatnot, etc., etc. Have you asked the genie?
Maybe you could ask your genie or your oracle or whatever. Like, okay, given the resources I have, how do I do this thing? And they'll tell you some like crazy.
Yeah, but they might just say it's not possible.
Yeah.
So those they aren't the answer to everything.
No,
they are just the answer to what is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, they can't break the laws of physics.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the presumption.
Yeah, they might be able to work around them a bit.
Yeah.
But
no, but sure. So if they, if you say to a genie oracle, can you make, I don't know, this glass into a pig without touching it or doing anything to it? It's going to go no.
Obviously not.
So, but it can't just solve any problem.
But you might be able, but you might be able to say, can I, given what we have available to us, can we build a bunch of nukes?
Sure.
And they might say, actually, yeah, probably yes.
Yeah, melt
this
down.
Is how you go about doing it.
Yeah, sure. Or a genie would do it for them.
Yeah. Which is worrying. But then, of course, on the other side, you have that ability, but also all the resources that the developed world have already anyway. Yes. So maybe it doesn't end up being so evenly matched. You're still going to end up with a big mismatch there. But they just suddenly get a lot scarier. And like their reach is longer, probably, slightly, at least.
In the digital warfare realm would be interesting. Because you have... In that situation, it is basically intellectual ability that wins it. That's all it is, really. You can have more computer power and processing power, but that's not the thing that hacks into thing and whatnot. You can do brute force number hacking and crunching, that sort of thing, to crunch through passwords. A genie AI is not going to be doing anything like that. It's going to be doing much smarter. So I'm wondering in that space whether you would have a more even match.
Maybe.
But then,
and if that becomes more important, as we've been discussing, then maybe that brings them up to a more even keel.
Maybe again, it might run into that thing where if you have a genie AI, it can develop some sort of cybersecurity that's kind of unhackable.
Yeah.
And no matter it itself, like a version of itself, could not hack into because it's just physically impossible.
Yeah, that's probable.
I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, to be honest, I actually think that this situation is probably not that likely.
No, I don't think it's likely. But if an ASI does turn into one of those other two, does open sourcing it create conflict or does it create peace?
Yeah.
And this leads us on to our question of will war ever end? Really?
Yeah, sure. I think if you just injected that into the world now,
sure, you've just had a paper on how to do it, and it's you need to understand maths. It's not that bad though.
Yeah, I think that will create conflict more than solve it. Just because you've just raised the stakes, you basically just handed out more powerful weapons to people who already want to kill you. Yeah, and yes, you've also got the same weapons. But we're already worried about them killing us now. I mean, obviously not. I mean, we're not worried about like ISIS, like literally taking over the entire Western world.
No.
But we are worried about small pockets of like insurgencies attacking major cities in the West or whatever, or anywhere in the world. Sure. So then suddenly they'll have the ability to do that to a much more effective extent.
Yeah. So what the answer to that is that you restrict it, you give it to only certain countries. I mean, maybe it's one of those cases where they develop it, the kind of spooks find out and they descend on it and say, right, you're shutting down.
Yeah,
now.
maybe. I can imagine someone like DeepMind publishing the stuff they're doing because they're all about progress, aren't they? That's what they'll do.
Actually, I think there might be some. I'm sure. I think there are some laws or something related to developing technology that is of like strategic military interest that can't be.
You're probably right there.
That the government has some sort of ability to come in and do something about.
Yeah.
So I think something like hovercrafts were developed, were initially developed, and were the military basically wasn't allowing them to be publicly available, the technology, until they realised it was kind of shit and wasn't that useful and let out. I think it was hovercrafts, something like that.
Hovercrafts.
Yeah.
They're great.
I'm pretty sure that there are examples of that, I think. And so if that's true, then you would expect that there be some legal barrier in publishing work that is of military interest like that.
Yeah.
Although,
maybe that may well exist already, specifically in relation to AI. I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah. Be interesting to find out, actually. I wonder if you can. But anyway, I think that there will be quite a lot of those types of things. Well, I mean, the laws will have to be made about this kind of stuff if they're not already, because there is so much potential for conflict off the back of huge developments in artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't see any situation in which handing genie type AIs to a group like ISIS could end in anything but more conflict.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, yeah, but you're handing it to everyone, so yes.
Yeah. You're handing it to everyone.
Yeah.
Included in everyone are people like ISIS, are people like, I don't know, just crazy nutters in their basements who want to kill everybody.
Problems,
yeah. So it's yes, everyone's got access to this technology and can stop those people, but then the people who are unpredictable, people who just act out, just do crazy shit, just like shoot up a movie theater in the US for no reason, well, for whatever, for some completely out of the blue.
Yes.
Like those types of people, armed with something like a genie AI.
They might ask it.
There are people out there who just want to like kill everybody in London.
Yeah, just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah,
sure, like the Joker.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if he had a genie ASI.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm imagining. I'm imagining like a kind of a cube thing. Just fucking, I don't know. I don't know what that's got in my head. It's just like
because that's in Transformers.
Cube. Yeah,
and they're all chasing it.
What
they're all spark.
They're all spark. I loved in the cartoons how they were just do you remember the Energon cubes?
Yes, when they sort of
fill up with like pink stuff.
Yeah, I do remember.
Sort of glowing pink substance. Energon.
Yeah, but I probably think in the ASI situation, you're probably not going to get a genie or an oracle anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, realistically, I feel like the most realistic outcome is
a sovereign AI.
Yeah, and that's developed once.
Yeah,
and that is probably going to be really bad for us. But we'll just have to wait and see.
We will
just usher in a new era of our sort of mechanical gods that will decide our fate.
Yeah.
And we won't have a choice about whether we want to fight wars or not anymore. That won't even be something we worry about.
Yes.
Because it'll make all the decisions for us.
Okay, so AI sort of brings us onto the question of will we ever outgrow war in any shape or form? So still, we're not talking about crimes and that sort of
just like individual acts of violence.
Sure, we're not talking about that. We're talking about countries fighting countries for various reasons, either through clandestine type things or open conflict. But let's consider those both separately if you want.
Yeah.
So let's say open conflict. Will humanity ever stop, have no reason anymore, or just not do it anymore to have open conflict? You go like, I don't know, in 2,500 or something like that.
Sure. And
at that point, you've had 100 years and there's not been a single example of open conflict.
Yeah. So a common answer to this is like, it's in our nature to always fight.
Yes.
It's in human nature. We're always going to be fighting because we're just like that. Our animal instincts or whatever. I mean, it's certainly true that from an evolutionary standpoint, as social animals, we do have a tendency for in-group, out-group sort of tribalism and fighting.
Yeah.
And it probably served a pretty useful purpose back in the day.
Oh yeah, sure.
Back in the wilds of ape days.
Sure. No, yeah, definitely, and it serves her purpose. We see in lots of different animal species.
Yeah. But I don't think just because historically it's been in our nature that it means that it's always going to be around necessarily.
No,
and I think there are several possible futures or possible reasons why it might disappear entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of them are like guaranteed at all.
No.
But if we go down some of these roads, like for example, just access to resources. If everybody in the world just had access to enough resources and energy to basically make everyone live comfortably in the way that we do in the West, I guess, but better.
Sure.
Just comfortably and happy.
Unlimited energy, unlimited food.
Unlimited food.
And,
yeah, exactly.
And resources. Is there ever going to be unlimited, like earth metals, earth materials? Oil. Maybe not oil.
Well,
but
oil.
Sure, rare earth elements and
rare
that
earth
sort of
elements.
Stuff.
I mean,
mining.
Asteroid mining.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost have like an infinite source of that kind of stuff if you can get out into space and start.
Rare earth element. I'm just wondering if there is any geological resource that would consistently never be evenly distributed, or at least not everyone is always going to have enough of it.
Yeah, that's possible. I guess I'd not really thought about that before. But you think that we'd be able to think our way out of that? Eventually, that like the technological development, we get to a point where that isn't such a problem.
Sure.
That's just such a hand-wavy answer.
I think you're probably. I think that's. I mean, we're thinking far into the future now.
Yeah,
really far into the future.
Yeah.
So.
And if we've had something like an ASI, as we've just been talking about,
yes, then that's
not one that's just doing its own crazy thing, but one that's working with us and one that we're using, that's augmenting our like experience, and our lives. Then we will be able to probably engineer our way out of limitations like that.
You would have thought so, sure. So I think with an AI, an ASI type scenario, then I think war would probably quite quickly end. There wouldn't really be any point there.
Yeah.
It would be pointless.
I mean, we're already seeing pockets of the world where, open conflict doesn't happen anymore. Like Europe, for example.
Sure.
Sort of the entire Western world, really.
Western Europe.
Yeah.
Wasn't that long ago that...
that's fair enough. Western Europe.
Yeah.
Like Ukraine isn't.
Sure.
Russia and Ukraine aren't particularly happy right now. Western Europe, add the US into that as well, and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That as a group, has been pretty stable. I mean, they were not fighting amongst each other now.
No, for a long time.
So if that kind of level of development extends to everybody.
And yes,
and part of the reason is that we're just also that we just all depend on each other so much for economy.
Yes, I was going to say it's not just about comfort; it's about interdependence.
Yeah,
I can just I see that tending to grow outwards.
Yeah,
that axis of alliance between those countries, continuing to develop Europe and then eventually the rest of generally the world as just kind of a whole. It sounds kind of lame, but like one kind of unit of
Well, that is the thing. We are trending towards like a global civilization, and the internet's helping massively with that.
Sure.
And a global civilization, just by its very nature, is interdependent and can't be just fighting itself all the time. That's just too detrimental to the health of the whole thing.
Yeah. See, I'd like to see something, on the internet, because there are some barriers still, even on the internet with like language and stuff. Imagining a browser type suite from probably someone like Google, where you have the option to translate things, where it doesn't even say that anymore. There's no need. You just see everything that comes through from Chinese source, with all the Chinese alphabet and stuff, or Japanese, where you can't read it, or Russian. But it comes through and it's just English straight away, and the translation is so good, and it's vice versa for them. So the whole thing is just an even playing field.
Yeah, and the translation is, as you're right, the translation is so good that it's not just like sort of derped. Like, fuck does that mean? Like, it's actually like properly. There's meaning extracted and put into your in a way that you can understand.
Sure.
Yeah, a level playing field. Yeah. That'll massively help.
Those types of things. Yeah. Yes, I think will help stop that in-group out-group thinking, and stop and forgetting that as well. Everything will just become too interdependent in terms of resources.
Yeah.
In terms of economies relying on each other. So, I imagine even without an ASI type scenario, it trends towards a world, and we're talking again really far future, where it's just not necessary.
Yeah, although there are some pretty divisive ideologies that exist in the world now. If they don't disappear, will still be around and still drive people to try and kill other people.
I think you're right. I just kind of, as countries become more developed and people have opportunities to stand up for their own rights and stand up for their voice and things, those ideologies they're old. They kind of die
and they're less attractive to people.
They're less attractive.
They don't draw in recruits essentially.
I mean,
they'll start to get viewed more and more as a kind of like archaic craziness that they probably should be viewed as now.
Yes, I think that's generally the trend of. Well, it seems to have happened in all the developed countries.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
there's no example where it's not happened like that.
No,
I mean there are examples where countries have regressed or cultures have regressed somewhat in their development, but never when you get to the kind of level of development that's prevalent in the West.
Yeah,
or in somewhere like I don't know, Japan or something. They tend not to regress to more superstitious beliefs. Generally don't.
Yeah, that's very true.
There's almost no examples, and if there is one or two, they're much outweighed by the counter example.
That's a very good point.
So I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to push everyone in that certain development level, and everyone was uplifted to the same level. I would not be surprised if a lot of the very conflicting ideologies become they smooth over, like we were saying.
Yeah. They just start to seem just like, why were we ever taken in by this?
Yeah,
I think as what you were saying, opportunities is a big thing. Like people will have opportunities to like learn and do things they want to do and like pursue lives that they want to pursue.
Yeah,
they won't be so stuck into just the kind of day-to-day struggle of survival or whatever.
So technology is technology sort of a savior?
I think so. I mean, I sort of go along with that. For most things, I think we will think our way out of if we're not too late for it already, we will think our way out of almost all of our problems. I hope.
Or build something that thinks its way out of it.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing as thinking your way out of it. Sure. I do. Whenever we think about this, and it sounds like a utopia, I kind of then immediately take a step back and go, "Is that too? Are we being too optimistic?
Too rosy? Yeah.
Is it too, just because that when has that ever happened before? But like you say, there are.
It doesn't need to be like a shiny, glossy utopia though for war to stop, for open sort of giant conflicts like we see now
to stop
to have ended. I mean, a nice shiny utopia would be pretty sweet. But something like, and I don't mean culturally, really, but something like what we see in that kind of region that we were describing earlier, the West, that kind of relationships between countries just extending over the entire world. There's still going to be problems with crime and pockets of, tensions or whatever, but actual warfare is a thing of the past, I think, once you have the whole world in that kind of interdependent, interconnected,
resource-rich state.
Yeah.
I don't have a good counter argument really for that not getting to the case. Apart from the fact that, apart from the idea that maybe there is always some disparity, and you have these isolated regions that they become interconnected, but they never fully envelop places in the world for some reason. They never, no matter how much technology, those places are not able to be sort of culturally uplifted to a kind of level of technology where they're happy to stop.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's possible that it could go the other way, and you get even bigger separation between developed and developing.
That's what I mean. That's what. Yeah, exactly. So they're just two different worlds, maybe. Who knows?
And in that situation, I think you will still see conflict.
Yeah, but I kind of still think that even in countries where you don't have that, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to sort of figure my way around it. I mean, we're thinking of like I said, it's an idealized view of the world. I'm trying to think in sort of say let's say sub-Saharan Africa, okay, as an area of the world that has struggled to develop for various reasons. Is there going to be? Is that all going to be converted to sort of, resource-rich, shiny cities where everyone maybe don't work jobs and it's kind of an autonomous society that's I'm imagining like a futuristic kind of version of New York or something.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, isn't it?
It's hard to imagine, but then I guess why not?
Yeah. You just need to make sure that these huge sort of labour-saving technologies that are probably around the corner in the next few decades get distributed properly. Otherwise, you will end up with this huge imbalance. And there's no guarantee that they will be distributed fairly.
No.
Properly.
I mean, we are in the kind of age of altruistic kind of billionaire type things.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the like philanthropy that's done. And the stuff that makes a difference is, people like Bill Gates and those types of people. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe those.
A few more like people like that.
Yeah,
with a ton of money and that want to use it for that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but is
technology the only answer to the issues there? Maybe, or the root, like a root that addresses the roots of so many of the issues.
That it. I don't know what the roots of the issues are is the problem. So
yeah, who knows? I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure some people know.
I don't know.
I have a much better idea than I do.
No. I just mean not every. If everyone knew the roots of every problem, I guess
there would be no problems.
Well, not necessarily. I suppose some problems the root cause, but you can't solve it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still would push towards a world that war is greatly reduced anyway.
Well, I mean that's the trend anyway that we're seeing.
That just seems to be the trend generally. I mean,
death from war is down. Then over the last century, since the big world wars, has been decreasing. I mean, there've been little blips, and actually there's a blip right now, an increase. I think the last 2 years.
Sure.
But the general trend has been a decrease.
Yeah, I think it's quite a small general trend though. So as in most of it's kind of flat and wavy, and then there's like a small. If you could potentially pull out, and actually it's not a downward trend; it's just a sort of dip down.
Okay.
I don't know, but I would still presume that it would get less war.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, we're asking if war would disappear totally.
Yeah.
In an ASI type world, I think yes.
Yes.
But in any other type of future society, I still think it's hugely reduced. Hugely.
Yeah, hugely reduced, and you can imagine if we really play our cards right.
Say like a million years in the future.
I mean, a million years in the future.
And there's no ASI type things.
Who the fuck knows?
Apparently, it's just still been too hard to figure out how to build like a brain in a jar.
We're all just going to be living in a virtual world at that point anyway.
Well, yes, but will every in a million years? I mean, God.
I mean, a million years. That's enough time for our species to be just radically different.
Yes, quite a lot of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so hard.
Well, another
1,000 years, say.
A theory that gets floated around and has some academic weight from certain regions is the idea that humans will kind of breed themselves into two races. Is in the sense that firstly or into two species in fact, possibly that. Probably that can mate, but possibly can't even mate.
Reproductively isolated.
Yes.
Yeah.
In that you would get all the races blend together, okay, and everyone goes a sort of like slightly tan skin, just a mixture of all the races. As everything gets globalized, and then from that point, you get people who, as they do now, people select their partners based on positive traits. So someone with more positive traits is more likely to get a partner and breed with a partner that also has lots of positive traits. And so you end up with the separation of the human species, basically to like short, not very intelligent sort of type of human, and a very tall, very intelligent, very good looking type of human. And they split off that way. Yeah. There's some suggestions. And that could cause well, it wouldn't be much of a conflict between them because there's definitely one side that would win and one side that would lose.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that could happen if the only factor there is normal sort of biological, vertically transferred evolution.
Yes,
I mean, and we're not tinkering with the human genome, which we probably will be.
Which I think is more likely. I think at that point, a million years' time, I think all bets are off with traditional breeding. I think that is Darwinian evolution.
Yeah, I think that is a very logical extrapolation of Darwin. I reckon that's very likely.
And society is still, as people I think tend to forget or tend to. Darwinian evolution has not gone away in human society.
No,
the sort of survival of the fittest is not what Darwinian evolution really is. Fittest. It's not. It's gene fitness. It's not. It's just whether you pass on your genes. It's not like because some of the weaker people are now being saved by human society does not mean anything to do with Darwinian evolution disappearing. It's still going on. But when you get to a point, and maybe this is a different conversation we could do like a topic on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You get to a point when you're designing your offspring.
That's
designing the genes that are passed on, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That is not Darwinian evolution anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then all bets are off, and you probably. I mean, then you breed a race of very intelligent, very sort of stable, very happy people. You would probably. Once you've got it perfected,
and that's another technological factor which could feed into the eradication of war.
Yeah.
It's just. We just engineer it out of ourselves. If there is some kind of intrinsic
engineer aggression out of I mean aggression.
We just get rid of it.
Sure, aggression is a trait that's brought on by both nature and nurture.
Sure,
of course, but
and it's useful. People are more in situations.
Yes, but people are more genetically disposed to becoming aggressive or not aggressive. You see this in any. Breeds of dogs are more tend to be more aggressive. You breed those traits to be prominent, and you select them on those traits. You could easily. If you knew what you were doing and you were allowed to genetically modify humans, then you could, eventually engineer a society where everyone's on kind of a level playing field and everyone's very successful, and you're getting very high levels of technology that sort of solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So, in that scenario, if those types of when we're talking like when I said like a million years in the future, people those types of technology are available.
A few thousand. It's already you're getting. It's hard to imagine. A few thousand. I mean, 1 million is just so ridiculous.
Yes. Sure, but those types of technology could well be available to everyone and anyone in global society.
Yeah.
And so everyone would kind of get to a point where, in that far in the future, imagine there's no races. Okay, no. Whatever defines races, there's no distinct lineages anymore.
Yes.
Of humans, which there are distinct lineages of humans based on the continents and things, and how they've gone down their own lines from being isolated. But imagine they're gone, and imagine there's a kind of a uniform global population where everyone sort of looks the same.
Yeah, there's a bit of personalising, but that's all down to like your individual choice or whatever, rather than. You
still have cultures
heritage.
And things, different cultures, but
yeah.
Well, you have probably less individual cultures. Everything's more globalized.
Everything will be much more globalized. There'll probably be pockets of culture, but they wouldn't be quite as developed as they are now. You'd imagine, and that's not necessarily a negative thing.
No. So I think in that situation, you do end up with no war at all.
Yeah. That's a long way down the line.
Well, we're talking a long way down the line, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's a global civilization basically dedicated to just human happiness.
Which is
it's like John Lennon's dream, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is something that's like a logical. You take technology forwards,
and you take human evolution forwards.
Yeah, and we don't do something terrible in the meantime, or something really bad happens that sets us back loads. But all that does is set us back rather than stops it.
Is this an inevitable endpoint? Is kind of what we're saying. If you assume any level of improvement in the war, amounts of war happening,
I reckon it is.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. What if in this future, the only way you would then get war, if you continue to do this extrapolation, is if humans came in contact with a hostile alien species. You knew it was coming.
So it's like Independence Day.
Yes.
But in the future.
Sure.
And so we would actually be forced, even though we might be totally peaceful in our own global civilization,
we run into conflict somehow.
Just to basically save ourselves, to defend ourselves. Sure.
Yeah. We can't cooperate with whatever this group of aliens is, and we end up in some sort of conflict with them. Then
we'd have to. If we had no choice, then we'd have to go for it.
Sure, we'd have to go for it. We might be rubbish at war then.
Yeah, but then hopefully we'd have
very powerful technology.
Yeah, very powerful machines that could think about. Okay, let's design like a military strategist AI that's gonna sort us out.
Yes,
and then that'll do all of our thinking.
Just send out all the drones, and everyone's just living the same life in VR.
I mean, that was probably what it will be.
Just drone fights.
Yeah, well, just AI fights.
Yeah, it probably would be.
Yeah,
humans would have.
We might not even be aware of it. But let's say,
it's a bit hard to talk about this sort of thing in an AI sort of.
It is, yeah.
Well, because it's just all bets are off. You can't.
Yeah. But okay, let's say it's that.
Let's say we have very good narrow AI.
Very good narrow AI, or even a general AI that's not doing its own thing and just completely. We're not like brains in jars. We're walking around and we're aware of what's going on. We're like in charge of our own destiny still.
Sure.
Yeah. So we would be forced to defend ourselves or to defend our interests against this force. And we just got to hope that we
are better
than them, which we might not be. In which case we're fucked.
Yeah.
But if we are better than them, how do we play it? Like, do we eradicate the threat entirely? Do we just
is the Geneva Convention off then?
Does the Geneva Convention still exist in a world that there's no war? So like dust it off, get it out again. Like, remember this thing, guys?
It probably does it expire at a certain time?
I don't know.
In the future?
But I mean, we all probably have fairly advanced concepts of, the suffering of conscious beings and stuff. So things like chemical weapons, we'll be very aware that they're just like morally horrendous things to use. But if we had no choice,
it's an existential threat.
Yeah, it's an existential threat. Maybe we would just get on with it and just use the worst thing that we could possibly use.
Yes.
To save ourselves. I mean, we'd have to, right? At the end of the day, you'd have to protect. You can just like lay down and die.
No.
But I think this kind of human utopia like future, people aren't going to be too happy about it because people will probably have as I was saying, a more advanced concept of morality and like what it's like to be that alien and whatever,
And they wouldn't be used to wars happening.
No.
But then people change their mind pretty quickly when, the sky opens up and a giant UFO comes in and starts blasting the White House up.
Yeah. Yeah. And this actually ties into the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I think in response to like a comment that we had.
Right.
Question about whether would we view
aliens as people. Sure.
Maybe that would come into play. Is it possible to empathize with these things? Is it some kind of like giant like space octopus thing? It's like coming through a hole in the sky, like. Everyone's just like, all right, kill it now.
Kill it, yeah. A giant octopus? Is that from a film or something?
There's a film, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus.
No, I'm just. What is it I'm thinking of?
A fine piece of filmmaking.
Is it like a Hellboy film or something? It's like a giant like tentacle thing comes out of us.
Oh, is that Hellboy? I've seen it. I've seen both the Hellboy films. Can't really remember them, to be honest.
I think. Anyway.
Sort of Lovecraftian type monsters.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm imagining that.
Anyway,
Pacific Rim style, beasts.
Sure.
What are they called in that? The kaiju.
Kaiju, yes.
Kaiju, yeah. So some kaiju are coming out of the Pacific.
Yeah.
People aren't going to be like, oh, look out for their interests and make sure they're like, happy.
It's like eating the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, no, leave it alone.
Yeah. No, we're gonna just rip it to shreds.
Yeah, but I think in the event of a true existential threat, I think there would be resistance to using certain types of weaponry. But I think if fundamentally it was we die out as a species, or we do everything we can to beat them, then all bets are off, right? You just do whatever the most effective route to winning that war is.
The most destructive weapons that you can develop.
I think so.
Yeah. Doesn't matter how horrendously painful it might be for the victims.
I mean, it probably ends up being some sort of biological weapon, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Well, maybe not.
Maybe not.
That might not work so well against aliens with a different biology.
Well, that's the point, is that you would design it for their biology that's specific. It's very specifically engineered to be non-lethal to humans.
Or like a chemical agent or something.
A chemical agent, sure.
You just fire like a penetrating dart at one of their ships, and it just penetrates the hull and just releases this chemical agent
sort of thing
into the ship.
You would be thinking. I mean, nukes is pretty good.
Although they didn't work in Independence Day.
Oh no, they didn't. No.
They tried, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
The original Independence Day I'm talking about here.
I haven't seen the second one.
Neither have I.
I want to see it. Yeah, it didn't work in Independence Day. But what did work was to fly a MiG or whatever. Not a MiG, some sort of F-16 or something into
F-16, yeah, I think it was.
Into
the
giant
gun.
cannon. No, the computer virus is the thing that won the war.
Yes, that's very true.
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that. We'll get Jeff Goldblum involved.
Get Jeff in it. You'll sort it out.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in the Geneva Convention anyway.
So, yeah, so not allowed to use tactical Jeff Goldblums. No, sure. Maybe it would
tried for war crimes.
I mean, cyber warfare could be a huge thing in an alien invasion type thing.
Yeah, like trying to hack into the aliens.
Because numbers, that's one thing, is numbers are going to be universal.
Yeah, you try and hack into the aliens' computer systems in their ships or whatever. That's crazy thought.
Turn off their defenses and then chuck a load of whatever at them.
Yeah, so I think true existential risk, we will have to do whatever it takes.
Sure.
But it might not come to that, because that would only really be the case if they're the same level of technological development as us, or very close to it.
Yes, okay.
Where we're desperately trying to fight, and claw our way to a victory.
Yeah.
But it's probably more likely that there's going to be a large difference in technological advancement.
Okay.
One way or the other.
Sure.
And in that case, it just depends.
Just lose or
it's
win.
Just luck, yeah, essentially.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's probably true.
Because, it's probably likely that one of us has been around for a hell of a lot longer than the other.
Yeah, whichever one turns up on the other's doorstep.
Yeah.
It's probably the thing that's got the power to make the decision.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think
have we covered everything?
We've talked about a lot of war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably some crazy / cool things we haven't talked about.
Yes, I'm sure there are.
But / interesting.
What about if in the future we play out our war needs, our kind of human war needs in VR and this sort of stuff? We don't need these conflicts, the necessity to have conflict. If that is such a thing, we need to be bred out of it. It can't be bred out of us. Can't be. Then we just.
Is that what global sporting events are now? Like a kind of vehicle for that.
That emotion, side of that tribal.
Yeah.
Kind of warrior.
Like
attitude.
the World Cup or something.
Watch MMA.
Everyone gets behind their national team.
A little bit. Sure. Yeah. I'm not convinced that it is totally.
It's not like a replacement for war, really.
No, and I'm not entirely convinced that most humans require war to be on to have a sort of psychological balance.
Sure.
It's just a few are kind of more into it.
Yeah.
But they can just do boxing or whatever.
Yeah, MMA, as you were saying.
Yeah, just go have a cheeky fight in a car park or something like.
Yeah,
you know.
And you could do that, totally legally, and it's great, and everyone loves it. Everyone gets involved, and it's fine. It's all good.
Yeah. So anyway, I think to round it all off, I think we could look forward to a future generally where war is at least a lot less common.
Yeah.
But it's quite far away still.
Yeah.
I mean, really far away. It's not going to be a long time before.
I mean, and we might still see some big conflicts between now and then.
Sure. So let's just hope there's not another global war.
Yeah, that would be bad. And that's possible.
You could
definitely possible.
Yes. I think it's unlikely. But possible.
Yeah, I think we've probably convinced ourselves that it's unlikely throughout this episode, to be honest. But yeah.
So let's hope for a better future.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Now it's time for Nuzz of the Week.
It is. I have a little story this week.
Cool.
So this is not it's the subject of the story is not an utter. Okay. But it's related, and you'll see. So it's basically about a physicist. Okay, so there's an article in on the Aeon website, which is titled "What I Learned as a Hired Consultant to Autodidactic Physicists." So these are physicists who have sort of taught themselves. Okay, at home. The person who wrote it is called Sabine Hossenfelder. She is a physicist working on some quantum gravity stuff. Okay. Which is a hard ass field.
Yeah. Fuck.
And a bit mental apparently as well. Like in a kind of like really kind of out there. Some of it. Really very difficult to understand cosmology type stuff. And she decided between jobs. She used to get emails through, and we've had this as well. Yeah. You get emails from people who are sort of self-taught. Yeah. Physicists. They get sent to the department we're in because we're in the physics department, although we aren't physicists. And they contain all sorts of things about. They tend to be quite abrupt, and they've discovered that everyone's been calculating kinetic energy wrong. Yeah. And
there's like some conspiracy, like loads of Nobel Prize winners are all like in some conspiracy against them or something, or so like the establishment's rigged against the truth or something. Yes, it's often that tone.
Is layered in that way. So what she started doing was replying to them. So she started to set up a business where she would ask. She sent out. I don't know how she was sending out or advertising this, but between jobs, to make a bit of extra money, she put in. I think it was something like. I don't know, it was you could charge $50 or something for 30 minutes of her time to just answer questions or whatever it was, on physics. And she started, it was $50 per 20 minutes. That's a pretty good rate, actually. Yeah. But, she's a very qualified physicist, so reasonable amount to pay, I guess. Yeah. So they would call her on Skype, and she would answer their questions. She got a few to start with, and then they get more and more and more. And so she would basically have these people that would phone her up who were they had an idea, and they would often she would say they had learned something, but they had a maths background, so they had done engineering or something, or kind of like a retired engineer, and they had got a bit older, and they'd started to get interested in kind of cosmology or something, but had no training in physics, and had began to teach themselves how to do things, and then think they had solved some big problem or revealed some kind of fundamental flaw in the logic that all physicists were using, and that the whole field had gone awry. And she would get all these bizarre questions about, how do we know what a quark is? They'd be asking, she had like 20 questions sort of a minute. I'm just like, and she would do her best to answer them and kind of pass it on. And she ended up turning it into like a little business where she would continually answer the questions of all these people.
That's pretty smart, actually.
Yeah, I just thought it was a really good idea. And then eventually she got to a point where they have a lot of her colleagues call her the crackpot consultant business. But she got to a point where she could no longer do it and passed it down to various other people. And now they have like a group of postdocs who just do this work as this like little business, answering crackpot kind of theories and trying to just simply trying to engage with those people. Because I mean, I've heard, for example, so a guy I know who runs a laboratory, a dark matter research facility.
Yeah.
He got a phone call once from a person who was continually harassing him about how he thought dark matter was something to do with some sort of like terrors he was having in his dreams or something weird like this, or like really mad. And it became like a bit scary. I don't know.
Oh my god.
Eventually, I think the person I'm talking about moved to a new place and had a new phone number, a new email, and he never got bothered by this guy again. But it was getting to the point where it's almost like, do I call the police? Because this guy's like off his rocker.
It's like serious harassment, basically.
Yes. There was some conspiracy with dark matter, and that's weird. It was weird.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
But she decided to engage with them and built a little business out of it, and I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of a quite a novel idea.
Yeah, is it taking advantage of them of their craziness?
No, because she's
because
trying
she's sort of helping them, really.
She's trying to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah. And maybe you'll stumble across a good idea somewhere.
Well, she says that at the end of the article. She says, "Who knows? Maybe it will one day lead us to a theory of everything."
With a big enough sample size of these people,
they might just randomly get it right.
Yeah, just stumble across one that's
Yeah.
Down along the right line.
She said frequently they would be making errors in their calculations where they would be dividing zero multiple times and all these kinds of just fundamental problems in the way they were looking at everything, but really convinced that they had done it properly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's taking. I wouldn't say that was taking. I don't think that's taking advantage. I don't think. I think if anything, she's trying to push them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, because the opposite is just to let them go down a well of getting more crazy, right?
Yeah.
And if you need to...
And it's not like you can spend all that time engaging with them for free.
Yeah, it's almost like being...
No one can do that.
I kind of consider that as a sort of paid to do public outreach type science thing. I guess it's not...
Well, it's consultancy, isn't it?
Sure. That's what she was... She turned the business into that. I was just like, maybe I should...
Just do it, yeah.
We should get other scientists to do it.
I mean, as you say, we get plenty of those emails. But all the emails that I get are all physics. Physics, yeah.
But I reckon. I don't know. 50 quid an hour. 50 quid no, it's $50 every 20 minutes.
So if you guys want us to answer your questions for $50 every 20 minutes, then we'll be rich.
$50? I don't know. I'm saying.
What we were
$50
each, right? Every 20 minutes. So that's $100 for the
pounds,
two of us.
though.
Oh yeah, pounds.
Yeah.
Sweet, yeah, that's fine.
So it would be £100.
£100 for 20 minutes
of our
time. So we will answer your questions.
Yes.
with our very wide-reaching expertise that we clearly have.
Yeah.
We demonstrate week after week by talking shit.
Yes, exactly. No, I think generally, I think that's a cool idea, and I think more people should be doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a good way to make extra money. You teach undergrads, why not teach the people who are kind of a bit mental?
Yeah, and actually, clearly, a lot of them are.
I don't think they're not all crazy.
They're not crazy. They just haven't learned the full body of the research.
Yeah.
They haven't got behind them the knowledge they need to answer the questions they want to answer.
Exactly.
They think they do, but they don't know they don't.
Yes.
So actually, a lot of them are actually pretty driven to get on with this work. They just need some direction. So actually, it's a pretty good idea.
That's what she said. She said most of them aren't crazy. They're just making errors and are very keen.
Yeah.
And to kind of contribute to something, but they just don't have the training to.
Yeah.
Which I guess
that's fair enough.
I mean, you do get ones that come around that they're not that. They are
completely
off the wall.
Yeah, lacking in any kind of.
I remember one of them coming through this saying in capitals, "Your subject physics is dead" or something. And it's like, oh god. But I read it obviously.
They can be pretty hilarious.
Very funny.
Sometimes you get multiple ones.
We should be saving them up.
6 or 7.
We should be saving them up and reading them out. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, we should definitely. We'll be doing that from now on.
I don't know how do you... Okay, we're going to have to find them they'll still be on the servers,
Yeah, right? I guess so.
Unless we deleted...
I probably have deleted a lot of them.
I might have 1 or 2.
There's been a few recently, in the last week or so, I think, that I might still have. I'll find them next time.
Yeah. I really should be doing that. I don't know why we haven't tapped into that resource.
Yeah.
The thing is, partly because it's just a shitload of...
Some of it makes no sense at all, for a start.
Yes.
Some of it will be a bit a bit too
it gets
technical and a bit.
Yeah.
But then there'll be some that are on the money.
Yes, there will. Okay, we'll look into it. Anyway, I think that is probably the end of the show.
Yep, I think so too.
We have some ideas of what we're doing next week, and
yes,
I haven't actually decided. We haven't decided what it is.
I've got some ideas.
Yeah. There's a few things floating around.
Yeah,
but we haven't decided, so we won't say.
It'll be a surprise.
Yes.
Everyone loves surprises. So.
Yes. So, thank you very much for listening, as ever.
Yep. And any comments, questions and comments and things like that, we will read and possibly respond to on a video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, see you later.
Yep. Until next time.